This time, I want to bump that down to third, make this my best set. Who's with me? Thank you for being here. That is my tonight ambition. I also have a long-term comedy ambition, and that's to make a body of work, of comedy, that's so good that this friend of mine regrets having killed himself. I know. Swinging for the fences. But I thought about this a lot. I think the first part is going to be the hard part. The comedy has to be so good that it generates a metaphysical reality where his consciousness still exists, so he can feel bad. That's the first step. Bit of a doozy, I know. Second part's a lot easier. Then the comedy just has to be better than the stuff he used to enjoy. Not a lot of competition. I got it all figured out. A lot of people don't like talking about death, dying, spirituality, stuff like that. You can guess where I stand. I like a good funeral. One reason is I always want to be the funniest guy in the room. And at a funeral, you just have to be willing. Most recently, I was at my friend's mom's funeral. It was okay. It was a little distracting because she was about the same age as my mom. And I had to consider that maybe she was susceptible to things like mortality. So. Bit of a bump, bit of a roadblock. Another thing that was really distracting though is that as the ceremony began, there was this guy, stage left, second pew back. As the ceremony starts, he starts fidgeting and he brings out a notebook. I'm thinking, what kind of sociopathic misanthrope is taking notes during a funeral? But it didn't even stop there because he starts fidgeting again in the pew ahead of him for something to write with. And then look at it, oozing sack of lunacy. You're the only one who's counting on you rough drafting your manifesto during this celebration of life. You bring something to write on, you bring something to write with, or you don't come at all. And it's the most worked up I get, because it was me. And I was pretty embarrassed. I know I was very distracting for the people around me. I'm sure they were wondering what I was writing, and I bet none of them guessed jokes. You guys are probably wondering, my God, you monster of monsters. What kind of jokes could you be writing at this funeral? These jokes. That joke, and this joke, the next joke, these jokes. It's hard to lose your mom when you're in your early 30s, probably, I don't know. I know some of you recall, but however hard that is to have happened to you, I think he carried it pretty well. He hosted a good funeral. Everybody in the grieving line, he knew their name, how they knew his mom, made small talk with everybody. And I think, if only for that reason, I think the right mom died. Imagine, my poor mom's friends. First, their friend died, and then they gotta come to the funeral, put up with my zingers and my hot takes. Not fair to anyone. And you might think, well, Dan, just don't be the one who eulogizes your mom. That's stage time. In this business, you don't turn down stage time. Not if you want to generate a metaphysical reality so your friend who killed himself can feel bad. And you definitely don't. I don't think death has to be all doom and gloom. Is he still talking about death? But this is the silver lining part. I'm making a list of things I won't miss when I'm dead. The first thing I won't miss is the constant fear of death. I won't have to worry about that anymore. Second thing on the list, an unreasonably close second, the band U2. No longer will I be pushing my shopping cart around the grocery store, hungered over it in fear, knowing that at any moment I could be assaulted with the cruel irony of Bono lamenting that he still can't find what he's looking for. beautiful day anymore. I like beautiful day because I live in Wisconsin and most of the time it's not. But then again, they're an Irish band. Those are Irish standards. Ireland has a different standard for a beautiful day. In Ireland, it's just 24 hours without a bomb. And they don't have to be consecutive hours. There's a lot of people don't know this because they haven't read the website I wrote to back this up. There's a branch of the Irish government, 7 people, and their whole job is to tally the amount of time between bombs. 3 hours here, 30 minutes there, 7 seconds there. And when they get to 24 hours, they press a button and they play the song, Beautiful Day. And then someone sets off the bomb because even Ireland is sick of U2. Anybody who's willing to talk about spirituality, I love to hear them out because I think they're some of humanity's most interesting ideas. I'll never forget the time this guy started talking to me about the book of Genesis. He's like, oh, people don't know what it's about. I know what it's about. I won't explain it in that voice. And that's not what he sounded like. That's what he sounded like to me. He said the book of Genesis is about aliens. All in. Bring it up. Not just aliens, reptilian aliens. Not just aliens from outer space, but aliens from a different dimension. And what did these reptilian aliens from another dimension do? Well, they landed in the Garden of Eden, had babies with the people in the Garden of Eden, and he concluded that's where evil came from. Yeah. Great, perfect. I love that story so much more than you guys did, that anytime I meet someone, that's what I start with. That's my icebreaker. Because later, when I inevitably suggest that you two should retire and apologize and take a vow of silence, that's not the craziest thing I heard that day. Puts me in a real sweet spot. I love the Genesis story, but it's not my favorite. My favorite is this idea of animism. Animism is the idea that every object on earth has a soul or a spirit and should be treated with some amount of respect. I liked that idea so much when I heard it, but later that day I apologized to a piece of plastic because someone turned it into a U2 CD. You guys can't see him, but there's 90% tattoos, 10% human over here. And when he walked in, I'm like, please be on my side. Please be on my side. Yes, so don't fuck me. Just like that, just like you two, if I start thinking about something, I can't stop thinking about something. So, as much as I don't want to, I know more YouTube trivia than most YouTube fans. Here's something a lot of people don't know. Michael Jackson named one of his albums in reference to the band U2. He called it Bad. Now, like I said, I think about anything a little bit, I think about it a lot. Lately I've been thinking a lot about PBR, and I'll tell you, it doesn't take much to think too much about PBR, and I've spent days. I've been wondering what would have happened if it had come about in a time when metal was less precious. So instead of getting a blue ribbon, might have got a gold medal. Instead of being PBR, it'd be PGM. Tall boys of PGM, $2 pints of PGM, cases, barrels, crates, the whole thing. PGM. You guys know what the hipsters are drinking these days? PGM. The problem with Pabst Gold Medal is that someone at some point would say, you're not really pulling gold medal weight. We're gonna have to take the gold medal back. I'm surprised they haven't taken the blue ribbon back, but what would PBR be without the BR? It'd just be P. Maybe we're onto something. Any situation I'm in, I find a way to overthink it. Recently, I've been in the privileged position of being a stay-at-home dad, and as such, I've been thinking a lot about myself. And learning a lot about myself. I learned that I still love toys, as much as ever. I love toys. I also learned that I still hate sharing. As much as ever. I've built so many block towers just to watch them topple before I could even put them on Instagram. None of you have seen my bot towers, and I don't like it. The reason I tell myself I think so much about myself is I want to know who I am and how that's going to affect who my kids become. So for starters, white guy, 2019, not a great look. I'm sure they're going to hold that against me as they get older. They're going to say, Dad, it was the 20-teens. You had all the movements. You had the Black Lives Matter movement. You had the Me Too movement. You should have known better than to keep being a white guy. They got a point. They're going to be in therapy, I assume. I hope. Better to have it, not need it, than need it and not have it, especially when the only way to not need it is to have it. They're going to be talking to their therapist. They're going to say, I was raised in a negative household. My dad was both white and a guy. I'm afraid he passed it on to me. Hashtag stop the cycle. And I tell you, I'll wear the ribbon, I'll buy the button, I'll go to the parade if they invite me, but I don't think they will. I think that's kind of the point. Think about anything, think about it too much, looked into it. Not just a white guy, I'm the 30-point buck of white guys. You all remember the Youpers. I am what science calls a white cis hetero male. That means I'm privileged to the 4th exponent. I know I'm privileged because I know what an exponent is. But I do want to make it clear. I do want to say that I have always, to the best of my ability, celebrated every ingredient in the melting pot because of how I was raised in front of a TV. I saw every episode of a show called The Flintstones, which is about life in the distant past, and every episode of a show called The Jetsons, which is about life in the distant future. Little Danny Bacula's takeaway was people of color must just be a phase. Because they're not there, and they're not there, and Hanna-Barbera's not telling me what happened. My only takeaway had to be, we gotta make the most of this. Looking back, of course, I shouldn't have trusted Hanna-Barbera with that kind of thing. There were a lot of red flags, During the commercials, Fred and Barney were selling cigarettes. But it was only the 90s, we didn't know. Another red flag, one I really should have picked up on, is even the Hanna-Barbera shows that took place in present day, a lot of those animals were talking. That's something I knew as a kid. They were doing a lot of stuff animals didn't do, but still picked up on the people of color thing. The most embarrassing part of it, looking back as an adult, I really should have known not to trust them because every single one of their characters was just so two-dimensional. Here's the difference between you and me. A lot of people would have that thought and think, well, I just wasted my time having that thought. They definitely wouldn't write it down. Not only did I write it down, I never wondered whether or not I was going to tell it to you. I got another ambition. This one's about my family. I talk about how I think about myself a lot, and that's true. But I do also put a lot of time and energy into my family because there are things that I want to see for us in the future. Number one is I want us to have the most romantic divorce. Like the kind little girls dream of. I want this divorce to be so epic and traumatic that not even Werner Herzog would make a movie about it. That real next season on The Office, Jim and Pam divorce. That's what I'm going for. 50 years later, when people are watching the video I'm taking, they're going to be like, why were people so upset about Jim and Pam? And I think The Office is just for us. I think the most important ingredient of having this most romantic, most traumatic divorce, I'll tell it to you, is that neither of us will want it. And you might think, well, Dan Bacula, if you don't want it, then why get it? Well, born and raised in the Midwest, all our neighbors will be getting divorced. To stay married would be rude. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your